particularly good in terms of going through this as a team is that, as you said, when the times get tough, if a competitor comes on and sort of like, makes it much more difficult, or the economy knocks your legs out from under you, during those times, you've got to act really fast and make tough and difficult decisions. But the tighter that group is, the better they're going to work and understand each other and be able to move beyond just their own personal conflicts to a resolution that is much more vital and important for the organization as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so regularly working on these issues is almost like strength training so that you'll be ready for the big competition.
That's a great way of putting it. You've been terrific. You've been so open and candid, and I really thank you immensely.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Now, Kim, what I found most interesting about what Amy discussed was the idea that team building is like strength training. It prepares a group for those big challenges, which I imagine applies to not only the executive and management team that Amy was telling us about, but also teams that have been together for a long time.
Absolutely, Patrick. I agree.
Could you tell us more about those teams, individuals who perhaps come from the same department? It's probably the team that I'm guessing most people can relate to most.
Sure, Patrick. And like you said, when most people think of teams, what comes to mind is a functional team. A functional team is comprised of a manager, his or her employees for a particular functional area. Accounting, human resources, and purchasing departments are examples of functional teams. The biggest challenge for functional teams, specifically those that have been intact for a long time, is staying committed to the guiding principles that make a team successful. Being a successful team does not just happen, it takes work. Great teams share a few common elements. Let me share some of those with you. Number one, purpose. The members identify why their team exists and are invested in accomplishing the mission and goals. Priorities. The members know what is important, who should do the work, and sets time frames for implementation. Trust. The members engage in open and honest conversations. Communication begins from a position of positive intent and by seeking to understand. Ground rules. Members establish norms for working together. Roles. The members know their roles and rely on each other's strengths. Decisions. The members have a clear process for making decisions. Conflict. The members engage in conflict openly and constructively. And finally, accountability. The members of the team hold each other accountable and responsible.
Interesting, Kim. Now there are also teams with members from different departments, perhaps put together for a special project. Tell me about that type of team and what sort of issues they can run into.
What you're referring to is a cross-functional team. Cross-functional teams are made up of employees from various departments or functions working together on various organizational tasks. For example, a cross-functional team could include members from such departments as research and development, design, engineering, marketing, etc. These teams are often empowered to make decisions without the approval of a manager. The biggest challenge facing cross-functional teams is lack of clarity. Most cross-functional teams invite employees from different areas of the company to participate. Each person brings a different agenda, has their own responsibilities outside of the team, and most of the time report to different managers. And I've asked members of cross-functional teams to describe some of the best practices for moving from the beginning stages of team development to performance. Everyone basically says the same thing. We spent time defining exactly what we needed to accomplish. I knew exactly what I was responsible to do. We spent time getting to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We utilized the process for running our meetings in an efficient manner, and we were really able to get a lot of things accomplished.
I imagine that an executive team might run into the same problem, in that you have individuals who are experts in different functions trying to work together to achieve strategic organizational goals.
That's true, but you should also keep in mind that executive teams function just a little bit differently. They have to guide the strategic direction and provide long-term stability at the top of the organization. The need for collaboration and influence is much more important at that level. There's not a lot of room for personal agendas within executive teams. The executive team-building process often focuses on aligning each member around key strategies and business challenges.
Well, I'm thinking, Kim, as I'm hearing you say that it's probably very tough for someone who's a CFO or a vice president of sales or vice president of human resources who's called on for their area of expertise. For example, we just heard from Amy about her sales and marketing person and the finance person. They had very different ways of approaching business issues, and they ran into some conflict because of that. But in an executive team, they know they need to go beyond those functions and to think about what's best for the business in a more global perspective.
That's right on target, Patrick. The need for collaboration influences much more important. The executive team building process often focuses on creating alignment from both the individual and a group perspective. Executive team building also focuses on developing clear expectations, creating systems around tracking success, analyzing performance, and measuring how they function as a team. The executive team, through their behaviors, models the way and sets the tone for how leaders on all levels within the organization should function.
That's very interesting, because getting to that point where everyone truly knows what they're trying to accomplish and how each person can contribute, I mean, that's not an easy task. It's not something you can accomplish in one day. So what I'd like to do now is hear from our audience and get a feel for what they think is the biggest obstacle for a team to overcome in order to reach that level of understanding. Is it A, being able to catch each other during a trust-fall activity? B, having honest, candid conversations? C, recognizing each other's strengths? D, becoming more productive? Or E, deciding on an exotic location for a team-building session? Let's just take a minute and see how the results are coming in. So far, nobody is picking the exotic location, huh?
And actually, that's a really fun one, Patrick.
By far, what we're looking at is almost two-thirds of the people coming in are saying having honest, candid conversations, Kim, is the most important part for them.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that's not surprising. To be able to have honest and candid conversations, that requires you to have a lot of trust and be able to put some skin in the game, as I would say, to be able to be out there and be able to say what's on your mind with people. And that's risky.
Well, and what's interesting about that, Kim, is that it touches upon real issues that teams face. I think part of that, not being able to have candid conversations and not recognizing each other's strengths speaks to the difficulty of team building in a business setting. I mean, it always seems to me, in sports, you're facing competition. I mean, they're right there on the field with you, You know that you need to work together to win, but you also know that there's a certain time and the game's over, so you know the end point. But if you're working on a project, it's not as easy to feel like a team.
That could be true. Project teams offer another perspective to team building. Project teams are usually created to accomplish a short-term assignment. In order to be successful, the team leader needs to set clear expectations and goals, and each member of that team needs to understand specifically what has to be accomplished in order to get there.
So that's where you run into problems then, when there isn't clarity around the expectations, and when everyone needs to know exactly what they need to do to contribute. Because I'm thinking that when conflict comes about on the team, it's usually when people have different ideas of what they should be doing and what the team should be doing.
That's exactly right. So even sometimes within the team, they don't have clear expectations of what needs to be done, and they end up competing against one another, or they end up competing against other departments, which in turn could end up taking a toll on the amount of time it takes to reach a goal or to have success as a group. Teams that spend the time on the front end to develop the framework for being successful accomplish more, build better relationships, and let's not forget the most important thing, they have a lot of fun as well.
Excellent, Kim. Thank you. Before I talk with you a little bit more about some of the other issues in developing a team, I'd like to speak with Crystal Donor, the Director of Food Service at BCUSA. I want Crystal to tell us from a team leader perspective how conflict within her group was handled. Now, Crystal, just in terms of some quick background, tell us a little bit more about BCUSA.
Well, BCUSA was purchased by Barnes & Grund over 50 years ago, and this company, though, existed far long before that. Started out as a Amish-owned cheese company, and then Von Braun purchased it several years ago, and it became part of their portfolio.
Describe for us what a director of food services does.
Well, what I do in my role on a day-in and day-out basis, I have currently 5 positions that report to me. So what I do as a director is define what the strategy is, how we're going to grow the business, work with marketing to expand what the product lines will be, how those product lines fit within the strategy.
That's really, it's a very demanding position you have, a very diverse position in terms of dealing with marketing, with products,
with
the plant, with then getting product to the marketplace. When you did the team building, you say that there's 5 people reporting to you directly.
Correct.
Was the team building among the 5 people?
It was, yes.
They, as you describe it to us, are coming from very different perspectives, very different points of view, and very different disciplines.
Different disciplines, certainly different work experiences in history. Some have worked for large companies, some have worked for smaller companies. All of them have worked in food service capacity in some way, shape, or form, different needs, different areas of focus, and even geographically, all of them are located in different areas of the country due to what the needs are in the areas that they're covering.
Well, that's so interesting as you describe that, Crystal, because oftentimes when we're talking about team building, and particularly the way you're describing it, we're talking about people who need to work together really well in order for everything to click. However, they wouldn't necessarily seek each other out because they come from very different backgrounds and perspectives, as you described. And so the idea of getting them to play well together, to work well together, and to bring their best, and if not eliminate, at least to lessen the conflicts, is a real trick. What have you learned in that process?
One of the major discussions we had focused on was probably the quintessential example of a team is a sports team, a baseball team, and how that baseball team, certainly the pitcher has a very different job than the catcher has a very different job than the first baseman, but all of those elements need to come together to reach the objective, whether that's the objective for our strategic business unit, and then ultimately that strategic business unit has to play a role in the total company. So the individuals on the team, and we finally came to at least a semi-agreement that we went beyond a work group, but that we were a team. We took that concept and said, okay, as individuals, we make up this team. Then as an SBU unit, we are a unit contributing to the total company effort.
What's, I think, particularly interesting about team building, as you're describing it, is that oftentimes people can be very good at, managing their own staff or working with their boss, but that team playing, where they're working with peers, oftentimes is where it gets muddy. What did you experience in that?
I have experienced both directly being part of a team, of being part of the executive team at the company here, and then also having a team that reports to me. I think it's very easy for all of us to be very focused on what we're doing and maybe not recognizing how other people on the team directly impact us, or people that maybe aren't directly on the team that certainly impact us depending on how you're defining that team. But one of the things that I found, and it was beneficial, was we had taken the opportunity to do affirmations of all of the people on the team. Basically what was done was each person on the team needed to tell the other person or another person on the team or everybody on the team what it was about them that they admire.
Oh, that's terrific.
There was a lot of, I think, surprises. There were things that I think were said to people. I had it done where it was said in front of everybody, and then I had it done where it was just done on a one-on-one situation where, you would talk, you'd have, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever the time period was, to be able to say what you had to say to one person, they would say it